excited to be joining you this afternoon. Hi to all our Maryland friends that we see that are here and in the chat. Thank you for being here. And to all of you, we're really excited to share. So let's get started and talk about emerging adults. Nini, if you can go to the next slide. And thank you, Hillary, for that introduction. Yeah, Nini and I are here from the Maryland State Library Agency, and Alli is here from Howard County Library System, and Heather Jackson from the Prince George's County Memorial Library System to share what they are doing, actually right out with emerging adults in their communities. So we are thrilled to be here. And we're going to hopefully cover several aspects about emerging adults with you this afternoon. We're going to give you a little bit of a background and kind of the Maryland journey, how we've found our way, talking and thinking and trying to serve emerging adults, and how that led us to a summit, which we held just about a year ago on April 1st, 2025. And then we're going to really hone in closely with Alli and Heather and have you hear some of the examples of what they are doing to work with emerging adults and meet their needs and their interests. And then we'll open it up for some questions and some discussion. So our goals are that you leave today with a greater familiarity about what exactly, who are those emerging adults and what are the characteristics that define that age group that we're kind of placing in that ages 18 to 29 range. We're also going to hopefully help you think about a potential organization in your community with whom you could work that could help you meet the needs of emerging adults as you think and learn a little bit more about them. And then maybe brainstorm a programming idea that you could take back to your library organization or colleagues and think about how you could, what you could offer and work with emerging adults. So those are what we're hoping you leave after spending an hour with us today.
We're very close. So emerging adults, we also call them EAs. Who are they? We define them as ages 18 to 29 years old. And we learned the term from a scholar named Dr. Jeffrey Arnett, who coined the term. And his research found that there have actually been dramatic changes in this time period in people's lives since the 1960s, and that in industrialized societies, instead of entering marriage and parenthood in their very early 20s, like they did way back in the 1960s, most people now postpone these transitions until their 30s. And they spend their late teens and their 20s in self-focused exploration as they try out different possibilities in love and work. And really, essentially, Dr. Arnett says that this is actually a new developmental stage, and there are quite a number of people. There's hundreds of research studies now through the Society for the Study of Emerging Adults. And what we learned from Dr. Arnett is that there's 5 key features of emerging adulthood. The first is identity exploration. There's a lot of instability as people are trying to figure themselves out. There's quite a bit of self-focus because they're not doing necessarily parenthood and things that keep them from having some self-focus. There are a lot of feelings of being in between. They're not quite adults. They're not children. And it's also an age of possibilities. So there's actually quite a bit of optimism, which is nice to hear in this developmental stage.
So just a little bit about the journey. How have we kind of come to where Maryland's landed today in the work that we're doing around emerging adults? And I think what Nini just said is that kind of that in between. We began thinking a few years ago, there was a practitioner in one of our library systems who was very passionate about working with this age group. And she was really beginning to look at, we work so hard with our youth and groom them from children through tweens and teens, and then all of a sudden they graduate. And it's like kind of we thrust them out of youth services, but they don't quite fit into adult services, and they don't know anybody in adult services. And it's kind of like, where do they fit? And we really wanted to make sure that we don't lose them at this age, that they're kind of working into this middle stage, and we want them to know that we still value them as library customers, or maybe find them if they haven't been traditional library customers to this point. So what can we do to not let them fall through the cracks? We don't want to lose them after serving them as children. And so what are those traditional adult services that might be of interest to them, that might meet their needs? And how can we stay in touch with this 18 to 25, 28-year-old age group? So we started having conversations really diligently in 2021 as we kind of were piquing this awareness about this age group. And we held some showcases looking at their collections, what services, what programs, what partnerships can we begin to build in our communities to really key in on this niche service population, which led to some of our some sessions that were held at our annual library conference. Maryland and Delaware share the same annual conference. So in 2022 and 23, we had some really well attended sessions at that conference where people were really beginning to think and dig in and focus on this age group and how can libraries meet their needs. That momentum began and really culminated in the Maryland Library Association creating an interest group in 2022-23 around those library staff that wanted to stay together, keep talking about emerging adults, and just really form that interest group. And so the energy just kept developing and took us along this trajectory, like maybe it's time to have a statewide event where we all come together and spend a day talking about emerging adults, find out what people are doing, what can we continue to learn about. And that's where we began planning in 2024 for a summit, which took place last April. So we're going to talk a little bit about what happened at that summit.
Yeah, so now we're going to step into a few more details about that summit. And we want to start out with talking a little bit more about Dr. Arnett. The summit, first of all, was a one-day gathering of library staff from across the state. And there was an emerging adults panel discussion in addition to Dr. Arnett's keynote. And that's where we had a few representatives of from libraries who've already been working intentionally on engaging with emerging adults. And we have one of the panelists here today to share who was one of the panelists from the panel discussion, and that's Heather. So she'll be sharing with you soon about what she shared with us. We also had the Maryland Special Secretary of Overdose Response because she works extensively with some populations of emerging adults. We had additional special guests and roundtable discussions, and Carrie's going to be talking to you about that. So getting back to Dr. Arnett, again, he did coin the term emerging adults, and he wrote a book. He's written a few books, and we're putting his link in the chat to his website. And that term is relatively new to us. We used to use the term at-risk youth. That's something that we often hear, particularly in workforce. That's an old workforce term for sure. And Dr. Arnett did expand the age range beyond this at-risk youth, and that is the 18 to 29-year-olds. So really, we're recognizing that it does go higher into the 20s. And in workforce, you'll often see the age range will start at 16. That's fine too. We were surprised to learn from Dr. Arnett that this was his first experience working with public library staff surrounding services and support for this age group. So he had never worked with public library staff before.
These are just some of the special guests that we invited. to join us. We definitely wanted the library community to come together, but we really felt like we were at a point where we wanted them, others in the state, whether they were state agencies or smaller organizations, we wanted to kind of do that cross communication so that they were aware of what libraries were thinking about emerging adults. We also wanted to learn from them and what was happening from other groups that were also thinking about this age group. So we invited the Maryland Department of Service and Civic Innovation, which is underneath the governor's office. We had the Maryland State Department of Ed there. Our University of Maryland College of Information sent faculty to attend, kind of thinking about what angle from pre-service this could impact their future planning. We had the Department of Labor there. Maryland's Office of Overdose Response. That secretary had been very involved with emerging adults in her community before moving into this position that was created under the governor. So we really enjoyed having some time in the middle part of the summit. We had kind of special introductions of our guests around lunch. They could all introduce themselves. They did some tabling. So after lunch, we could do some mingling, some networking, and they could get to know our community, our Maryland library staff who were there, as well as meet each other, which was a really nice aspect of our day. So that's just a little bit about our special guests that we invited. And the next slide takes us into the afternoon when we were able to take our attendees, the library staff that were there, and we really decided we knew we were ready for just those small group conversations. So we had roundtable discussions around 4 big topics that we thought were really kind of resonating and needed a little bit more exploration. So there was a group that looked at data collection and what is actually being tracked and gathered from a local level about emerging adults, and better being attuned to what those needs are, that the library could then use that to inform their programs and services. Another group looked at programming collections that were being planned for this age group, partnerships and resources in the community that could be tapped into. And then as we're really thinking about services in the library for emerging adults, how does that impact staffing and structures? So those were our 4 big topics that lend itself to some great conversation in the afternoon. And I think at this point, it's time for us to throw it to Alli and Heather to talk about what they're actually doing in their communities and in their libraries to reach emerging adults. We actually hosted the summit in Howard County Library System, so Alli was there the whole day, as was Heather as a panelist. So I'm going to throw it to Alli to get us started.
Thank you. I'm actually going to throw it back to Heather because her slides are
It is
first.
Heather. I'm sorry, mixed it up. Heather, take it away.
Yeah, so it's great to join you all today. This has been some of the most rewarding work that I have done in my library career. So anything that we can do to get people thinking about this age group and trying to engage them, I think is really important. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the programming that we've been doing with this age group, particularly focused around arts and community. So the early days for us, we went into this thinking we would do an Adulting 101 program. And we decided to beta test it. We worked with one of our community partners, the Latin American Youth Center, and they brought one of their GED class cohorts, and they spent the day with us. We had a series of workshops for them on topics from financial literacy, career exploration, accessing community resources, library resources. And then coincidentally, we had a presenter that had to withdraw last minute, and we were able to find a community partner to come in and do a workshop on creative expression and the arts. That was an afterthought, but as we move into the next slide, you'll see that that ended up becoming the focus for us. So after we had this full day with our test group, we got feedback from them. And what they told us was that this age group can hustle for their basic needs. They can find a job, they can go out and they can make ends meet, they will figure out their budgets, but they really lack any opportunities for free self-care and creative expression. They said, we know these things are in the community, but when you're not making a whole lot of money and you are focusing on your critical needs, those things are not things that you have the financial means to access. And so they really enjoyed the creative expression workshop, and they wanted to see more of that. So for us, our next steps were really being responsive to what they said and not making assumptions about what they need. I think it's pretty obnoxious for people to go in and tell a user group, no, you need this thing, when they're telling us, no, we want this instead. So we really tried to inform our next steps based on their feedback, and we completely switched gears and went to focus on art and self-care. So on our next slide, you will see that what we did was we went into therapy through art mode. And so we tried to combine those two aspects, self-care and creative expression. We were able to find a wonderful local artist, Jessie Rodales, who is bilingual, which was a must for us. My branch that we hold this at, it serves an area that over 50% of our customers speak a language other than English at home, primarily Spanish, and that was certainly the case for our participants as well for this group. So we made sure that our workshops would be bilingual. We held 8 sessions during a month-long period, so it was twice a week. We did Wednesday night, and then we had a Saturday session as well. This again was based on feedback from the emerging adults that were part of our beta test group about availability and what might work for them. They also said it was really important that whatever we decided to do was something where somebody could come to any one session and it wouldn't throw the whole thing off. So if you couldn't make it to session 2, you could still show up at session 3 and fully participate. We also incorporated a licensed clinical social worker who worked with us and with Jessie to plan exercises that focused on emotional expression and stress management, particularly through artistic expression. One of the things that was really interesting to us was that first session, you could have heard a pin drop in the room. They were so focused, but they also were guarded with each other. And by the final session, you could see that they had really made connections with each other and felt much more free to be vulnerable in that space and really viewed it as a safe space. We had a really interesting range of participants. We ended up having 52 total emerging adults participate in at least one session with us. We averaged, I think, 27 participants per session. And most of the participants did attend multiple sessions. And we can go to the next slide. It was really important for us as well that there would be a celebration and recognition of the work that they did during this process at the end of things. One other thing that we heard from the youth that were part of our beta testing was that when they were still in school, they weren't kids that had access to a lot of extracurriculars. They typically were not students who were getting honor roll recognition or being celebrated. And for a lot of our GED students, that was part of why they did not complete their high school experience. With the groups that came to our arts events, we saw a lot of those same stories, but we also had some other folks that did have a more traditional high school experience, but were now a bit lost in these kind of early 20s and not really sure where to find that sort of connection again. So we had one of our state delegates came and we had an opening gala exhibition showcasing the work that they had done throughout the program. So it was displayed throughout the library on our walls. All of the participants received a citation from the state delegate, which was great. Many of them brought family members to this event, and it was really touching seeing how much it meant to them, and how much it meant to their whole community to be able to surround this group of participants with just support and appreciation. You know, I think it was very important to them that they were giving back to the library in some way as well. For many of them, they had not ever been to a library, which made it tricky to market this, right? You can't do your standard marketing with this age group. Some of the things that worked for me, I went and put flyers inside of bathroom stalls at places like Target and Starbucks, different places in the community where we thought that they might be seen, and put things up at some of the local churches as well. So some of the participants, a family member saw it at the church and let them know about it, and so they decided to come. So we had to take a kind of unique shoe leather approach to marketing, but it was effective. And then we'll go to the next slide, please. A really unexpected thing that happened at the end of this, when we did sort of a debriefing with the group, was that there was really strong interest going forward in paying it forward to the community. One of the things that we heard repeatedly in responses from the participants was that they feel very disconnected from community and very socially disconnected from people at this stage in their life. And so two of the participants asked if they could design a similar program for senior citizens who they also felt were probably similarly disconnected feeling to them. And so we ended up running a very similar program. We only did 4 sessions, but it was also a month-long program weekly at a low-income apartment complex that is local to us, that is limited to seniors and people with disabilities. It was incredible to watch our 2 EAs from that earlier group now using what they had learned and delivering that same type of content and experience for elders in their community. It was a huge success. We also had an exhibit for those folks at the end of that. And really lasting relationships were made, I think, in both programs, both between the EAs themselves and then also the EAs with the seniors. So I think my take home from all of this would be listen to the folks that you're trying to target. We often think we know what people need or what they will want, and that may not actually line up with their reality. So it's really important to be receptive and to be agile and change streams if you're hearing from the people that you're trying to program for that they need something different. And then letting them drive after that as well. So once you do have them attached to your library and understanding what we offer, be a support to them, support the ideas that they have and the things that they want to move forward with. And so this is turned into now an ongoing thing. So we'll be doing more programming for the EAs in the summer, and they are continuing programming for the seniors now this spring. And you can just see some of the pictures we put up, some of the work that they did, also some of the participants from our sessions. And they got some lovely press coverage as well, which they were very excited about because most of them had never done a press interview. And so that was very exciting to them as well. And we'd like to think that when we went into this thinking, oh, they need job skills and all of that, they built some of those things through these programs as well, not just, you know, their own self-expression and ability to process their own emotions. They built those social skills and those soft skills that are going to carry forward as they are in the workplace. So we felt like it was a very holistic program for all of them.
Thank you, Heather. All right, Alli.
Hi, everyone. Alli Jessing, Howard County Library System. Thanks for having us today. So I would just want to stress everything that Heather just talked about. Absolutely. I would second. That's also been very much our experience, you know, working with an age group that is at this point of decision making, this point of identity exploration, you know, just that sense of shifting from the oldest version of a child into the youngest version of an adult, but still being expected to make those long-term decisions about the trajectory of your career, your education, your relationships, your civic identity, your financial independence or goals. It's tumultuous. And so what we find ourselves here is a group that's in a gray zone. And despite the intensity of this life stage, this population is frequently underrepresented in library programming. I can do the next slide, please. Thank you. So what can we as libraries do for that? We can become an anchor during those points of transition and uncertainty. What we hear a lot, I still hear this countless times. I used to come to this library all the time when I was a kid. It was my favorite place to come after school. I felt like I grew up here. And at some point, those folks stopped coming in. And maybe that was because their campus library replaced the public library, or it just stopped meeting their needs, whether those are real, whether that was reality or a perceived experience. And we're also looking at that stage of uncertainty. Workforce data from the last several years shows that emerging adults are more likely than older adults to juggle part-time work with education or utilize gig-based employment. EAs have a higher rate of job mobility and financial uncertainty, and they're actively searching for some belonging and purpose. So libraries are uniquely positioned to serve as stabilizing institutions for this life stage. We can go to the next slide, please. Can I get the next slide? I'm sorry. Thank you. Before we design those programs, though, we have to understand our barriers. One is time scarcity, balancing school, work, family responsibility. Programming that requires long-term commitments or rigid scheduling is unintentionally going to exclude that population. Perception gaps, that's a big one. If somebody sees the library as just for kids or for academic study only, they may not think about us as a venue for career navigation workshops, entrepreneurship resources, or creative networking spaces. Financial stress, navigating student loans, entry-level wages, unstable housing, unstable income. So finding opportunities for free and accessible high quality program is not just an appeal, it's an essential element of engaging emerging adults. So understanding these barriers will allow us to design intentionally. So here we have just some programming examples that the team at Howard County Library System has developed. Most of these are developed and led internally by our instructor team. We do partner with a number of community organizations too, a lot of local nonprofits. The two that come to mind as having the most impact with this age group are Braver Angels. If you have a Braver Angels chapter in your area, they are a nonpartisan civic engagement group that works on depolarization during well, all the time, but specifically around politics. So we do a lot of workshops on how to have difficult conversations with family around the holidays. One of the benchmarks of this age group is developing that sense of independent political, social, and cultural identity that may be different from your parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, neighbors. So finding ways to voice that without damaging relationships has become one of the primary goals of our ongoing partnership with Braver Angels. And I will put their website in the chat later. But we have a lot that we do. We find that low pressure social spaces are really what bring in young adults. Hands-on, make and take activities, skill building is essential. It can't be abstract. You have to have concrete outcomes. With the exception of one category I'm going to talk about here in a second. We have a makerspace in Howard County, and we're doing workshops around the cricket. Has brought in a lot of younger folks. We do 3D printing meetups at our Savage branch. We have a digital design lab. All of those things allow people to connect with the library as the centering agency. So you can meet other people of your interests, with shared interests, with hobbies, with similar goals. And that allows folks to use the library as that kind of low stakes social venue. Swaps are very popular and very easy to put together. We do plant swaps where people can bring in cuttings or seedlings. Oh, okay. So we do school and work supply swaps, puzzle game swaps. Those are hugely popular with.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't like to take political calls. Sorry.
I think somebody's mic is open. We've also learned that intentional topic book clubs are very, very popular, not just the more abstract, like we're only going to read fiction or nonfiction. We have dedicated book clubs for LGBTQ folks, dedicated book clubs for people who are mindful of climate change. We have one group that's just focuses on music history, either the history of genres of music or biographies of musicians. One of the new ones that I'm really excited about that our staff have developed is called the Listening Lounge, where people will gather together with whatever project they're working on, their knitting, their embroidery, whatever, and listen together to a chapter of an audiobook and then talk about it. Silent book clubs, very popular. And when we're looking at career and skill development, it's really critical to think about that in a progressive, forward-minded way. The business of content creation is very popular. Podcast marketing, using Canva, AI-focused skill building, all very, very popular with young adults. And I'm going to keep going here. So we can go to the next one here. If I could get there we go. So I'm going to go through some of our best practices. One of those is co-creation. We talk to our folks. That can be informal or more structured in terms of an advisory group versus a more casual conversation. Participatory design, inviting folks in as stakeholders into the design process, bringing in that sense of investment and shared leadership. We do a lot of co-creative drop-in workshops where people can get that sense of leadership. At the same time, we want it to be iterative. Nothing can be locked in. You have to be willing to evolve and change your goals to match those of your participants, those of the community you're trying to bring in. Otherwise, you may be designing in the wrong direction and not be aware of it. So having folks give you that level of feedback and being willing and open to adjust as you move forward with your programming is essential. Next slide, please. Real life skill development. Emerging adults respond strongly to practical relevance. If we look at workforce initiative studies from the past few years, they consistently show high engagement in library programs focused on financial literacy, resume development, digital fluency, entrepreneurship, and civic participation. So again, we're not looking for anything abstract. They're looking for tools and resources. Specifically, workshops on negotiating a first salary, understanding a credit score, renting your first apartment, navigating the health insurance marketplace, launching a side business, a cottage industry. Those are all things that align really directly with the goals and lived realities, as well as the challenges of emerging adults. So when your programming meets those immediate needs, you'll start to see that attendance flow in. Next slide, please. So we've all heard about third spaces, right? So Ray Oldenburg's third spaces theory is really relevant when we're talking about EAs. The recent analysis underscores the importance of these informal gathering spaces in community health. Emerging adults report stronger feelings of belonging when the environments are casual, welcoming, and low or no cost. So game nights, creative workshops, drop-in art sessions, passive programming, co-working groups that may appear simple, they really do a lot to reduce social friction. Not every program needs to be instructional. Sometimes the most impactful offering is simply a consistent and welcoming space where there is no financial obligation to participate. This is really critical. American libraries are unique in how we model public access, and we are one of the last few institutions standing that invite people inside to be at home in a place that is outside the model of capitalism. So next. Thank you. Flexible formats. Yeah. Flexibility signals respect for the complexity of our participants' lives. Post-pandemic engagement research compiled by the ALA shows that hybrid and shorter duration programs see higher participation among younger adults. So one of the ongoing things we do is a virtual museum series. So art talks, docent-led workshops, any things that folks can do from home on their lunch break, on their schedule. And we also see a lot of response to recording these and putting them on our YouTube channel, so that people can engage them when they have the opportunity. There's never going to be a time that works for every single person to attend your program. But when you have virtual programming, it's very easy to make that an on-demand resource, as long as your speakers, if you're bringing people from outside, agree to that. But we will get another couple hundred views on a YouTube video after we get a couple hundred participants in our virtual workshop. So that is a great way to kind of pull in more participation and bring people into the library when they're able to make it meet their schedule. I would also say just never go longer than 90 minutes. Evening and lunch hour options are really good. If you're looking for guidance on tools to kind of establish access for that, I'm happy to talk with you about it. My email address is going to be at the end of the slideshow here. Marketing and messaging. Emerging adults respond to the benefits of what you're asking them to engage in. So like I said, instead of a career workshop, you may want to call that a how to negotiate your first salary workshop. Instead of financial literacy seminar, which is kind of more that inside baseball vocabulary that we use in libraries, building credit without going into debt. Those give more clear concepts of the outcomes and goals of what you're offering. So yeah, be focused on that outcomes focused language, and clearness in the benefit is really critical. Partnerships also really matter. Partnering with or collaborating with local colleges, workforce centers, and community organizations to reach this audience where they already are. Some of our most impactful programming has been with local bookstores and independent coffee shops. Whether we host programs at their venues or we invite them in as participants, we're finding that the emerging adults are already in some of those spaces, so they can become familiar with us as well when we go to them. Next slide, please. All right, measure what matters. We get fixated on the numbers and not the meaning behind them. So part of this work involves shifting a mindset to look at how impacts are relational and cumulative. Recent studies in public libraries recommend moving beyond the raw attendance numbers and track repeat participation. Who's coming back? What are they coming back for? Document the partnerships formed and gather that qualitative feedback. When you measure confidence, if you can measure that confidence growth and skill acquisition. That's not always possible, but go a little bit guerrilla mode when you need to get some of that feedback to really shift and develop those pilots that you're launching. All right, next slide, please. All right, this is the most important thing. None of this is going to happen without buy-in from your team. I am blessed to have a phenomenal team of curriculum and instructional specialists at Howard County Library System, and none of it happens without them. They bring in both the perspective of emerging adults, they're frontline engaging with emerging adults consistently, and they know what those folks are looking for. And they come to me with ideas. My job is really just to support them in accomplishing those. But none of this happens without really curating and listening. Value those voices of your team. And you'll see my email address is at the bottom here. So you can send me an email if you want to talk more about anything specific. I know I'm flying through it. I was trying not to replicate too much of what Heather said, but I think now we can go to, are we doing questions now?
Yeah, I think we're going to open it up. Just if any of you have anything specifically you would like to ask Alli or Heather. And I was struck, Alli, that when you just touched on, and it kind of dawned on us, not immediately through our trajectory, but to realize that we're not only talking about emerging adults in our community, but we're acknowledging that there are staff that we work with, our colleagues, many of them are emerging adults themselves. So just a whole other aspect of this, and including those voices in the planning, the external emerging adults, and then those that are our colleagues are so important. Dorothy, I see your hand is up. Do you have anything specific? I mean, is Alli or Heather or both, or I'll let them decide who's going to respond.
Well, I did have one question for Heather and then a question for both Alli and Heather. For Heather, I was wondering about how did you quickly connect with a partner after your speaker you found out your speaker was unable to attend? And then the question for both of you, I recently went and observed at Enoch Pratt Library's Teen Learning Center or Teen Learning Station. It's a very large space, includes maker space and sewing machines, as well as a lot of books, a lot of space for teens to gather and talk, do workshops, do cheerleading in the lobby area, very active. And so I just wonder, has Prince George's County Memorial Library System and Howard County Library System, have you thought about trying to incorporate dedicated spaces for the emerging adults?
So I guess to your first question, finding a partner last minute, I think that really goes to being a say yes organization. So we have really good long-term partners because we just don't say no to things generally. And so that's given us a really great bench to go to when we're in a pickle like that. This particular partner is affiliated with Pyramid Atlantic, and we've worked with them over the years on several other programs and events. And so we had done something for them recently. They did us a solid, and it was kind of a good reciprocal benefit there. But I think that all stems from you build your partnerships with trust over time because you step up for them and then they step up for you. As far as dedicated spaces, I think in our system, we don't really have anything that is emerging adult exclusive, but we certainly have some spaces that I think are designed with them in mind primarily. I'm actually here at our Fairmount Heights Library today because we were recording a podcast. But right next door to me is the largest makerspace we have in our county library system. And it definitely, between these two spaces, focuses more on the late teens and emerging adult group. So podcasts, AV recording equipment, a Cricut, lots of 3D printers, those types of materials. And then the programming is certainly targeting some of the things that Alli mentioned that they've been doing in Howard County as well. Just being flexible, having drop-in hours, giving access to a lot of things that might be prohibitively expensive to access as a young adult otherwise. So no, we don't turn somebody away if they're, 65 and want to come use this space, but certainly the marketing and then the use has been targeted more towards that emerging adult or late teen. I think we sort of use the 16 to 26 is more the range that we kind of focus on. And like Nini and Carrie were saying, the emerging adults is sort of a nebulous age range depending on who you ask.
I would second what Heather said. We don't have really the physical capacity to create a dedicated space for emerging adults. So it's just about adapting what we've got into spaces that they are welcome in. So we are lucky we have a DIY center that is hugely flexible. As well as maker spaces. And it's really, how do you utilize what you've already got and direct the potential of that opportunity to this group is I think the easiest way to say it.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question for Alli or Heather?
I, Allie, I've got a question about your feedback. You mentioned gathering feedback, and what tools or methods have you found most successful in getting feedback from your patrons?
You're not going to get anybody to fill out a survey unless you're giving them an incentive, right? So a lot of it is just about relationship building. I mean, we do track the numbers, but the most high quality and relevant feedback that we get is through those conversations or engaging with folks just in a way where they're not feeling interrogated. So
Mhm.
I go up to a lot of folks in our branches. I'm like, oh, what brought you in today? Oh, that book, I've been meaning to read that. And it opens the door to those conversations. And what would bring you back? What do you know,
Mhm.
hey, did you know that we're doing a clothing repair clinic in a couple weeks? You've got a sewing book, so really seeing people as individuals and not statistics helps you get that more honest and relevant and helpful feedback. If you hear somebody say, I saw the book clubs, but none of them are reading anything I'm really interested in, that's a red flag. You're not curating your book club to appeal to everyone, or it's only appealing to a certain group. So maybe there's an opportunity to establish a new one that looks at a different genre. You don't see any book clubs you like. What kind of material would you want to see? What would you want to read? What would you want to talk about? And getting that personal feedback is really, really important.
Thank you. I don't see any questions in the chat, but please feel free to come off mute or put something in the chat if you're unable to, the desk or whatever, and can't speak. That's fine. Thank you all. I wrote a whole bunch of stuff down for myself, so this was
Nini?
I have a comment also to offer, and that is this whole thing with emerging adults. I don't know about for you all, but in our state, we see this as a relatively new thing. This whole concept of, that it's a developmental stage, and what does that mean to us? We're thinking about things of, could libraries potentially in the future have spaces for people, dedicated spaces? Could there be emerging adult librarians, EA librarians? Could there be EA coordinators? What does this mean? So it's really, we feel like we're just at the beginning of this and beginning to understand and beginning to work on this. So we're excited to share it with you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Before
I,
we
I
wrap up, oh, go ahead. Heather,
it's
did you want
Hillary again. I
Oh,
was going to ask Heather a question about, I was so delighted to hear about the emerging adults wanting to work with the seniors and what did the emerging adults, did you just kind of let them go and plan the program, or what kind of guidance did you provide them, or what structure is there?
Yeah, so I think, my primary role was as facilitator, but I guided them through the process the same way I would guide a new library associate through the process of planning a program. Um, I think often one of the disconnects for people when they move into the workplace is sort of the bureaucracy of things, and understanding why structure matters. And so they developed a program plan with me. They developed, you know, curricula for each session. I was the one that made sure that the supplies were purchased and got there, but they had to come up with their budget and their supply list. So I really focused on making sure that it happened and was successful, but also making sure that they were developing real workplace skills as they were doing it, as something that they could build on, and also like go back to, like if they're in an interview, they could speak to, well, I managed a small budget for this project that I did in my volunteer work. So I think, a lot of these things, and I think Alli said this really well too, a lot of the work that we do for emerging adults is the library as facilitator, right? We can step back a little bit and let them drive, with some, with some guardrails, I guess. But yeah, they really did the lion's share of the work, and I was just there to kind of keep the project on track and to support them.
Thank you. Yeah, I liked how you said that they were learning skills along the way, workforce skills, but it was just they had the safety net of learning in a space.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And a lot of opportunities that may not have ever been available to them, maybe in high school or other out of school opportunities for whatever reason, that we're providing those experiences for them, which are going to just be so important to develop what they can share that they have been able to do. So
those community connections as well, I
yes.
think, that we talked about in those partnerships. So, how do you get from the idea of, I want to give back to senior citizens and run an art program, to actually doing it? Well, you need to find a facility that will allow you to come in and that doesn't have, a whole bunch of restrictions that would get in the way of things. So like being able to grease the wheels on some partnerships and point them towards groups that we had worked with in the past. Yeah, it was great. They even did a small grant I helped with for the city. And so that was what their supply budget was. So again, using those partnerships and integrating them into that world so that they can kind of see behind the curtain of how does something go from an idea to execution, and carry that with them, but still have a successful program.
Yeah. And the communication pieces that have to happen along the way, that you have to express what you're interested in creating. And that's a whole nother aspect of how we, look at all the hours we spend every day communicating back and forth in some form or another and helping them develop those skills. So for both of you, what advice would you give to people just getting started thinking about emerging adults, or what would you say is important for people to know about this work? And I feel like you've woven through and touched on some of those, but anything else you want to just kind of re-emphasize, I guess?
I'll go first. I would say the most important thing is don't preach, don't tell people what they want, listen and ask the questions, and be flexible in how you respond to what people are telling you. But really that dynamic of having a conversation and listening is the most essential part, I think, of the work.
I totally agree with Alli. It's the listening, but I will say that I think that getting to the listening point can be a barrier in a lot of places, because again, this is an age group that is often not coming to the libraries in many situations. So, finding them first is step one. You can't just put some flyers in your branch and assume that that's going to get people to show up. So going to where they are and then listening to them, I think, is really, really important. And that's something that sometimes a community partner can help with, or it can be something where you just get creative about, like, where does this age group hang out? Where can I find people of this age group? And just, putting in the shoe leather to actually go out there, find them, and listen to what they need.
Yeah, thank you. And Justin, thank you for your sharing in the chat. It's very true that don't give up. Any key takeaway that anybody wants to throw out there from our summit, or just the work that is happening statewide? Like,
I will just say one of the things that we really talked a lot about at the summit was you don't necessarily need a huge budget to make this work. You just need to invest your staff time with these goals in mind. Most of the stuff we do is low to no cost, especially those kind of low stakes social things. The swaps are community driven. People bring in the plants, they bring in the board games, they bring in the puzzles, they bring in the craft supplies. We don't, and we don't really have to invest financially in them. But investing your staff time is absolutely worth that level of investment, because you will get returns on it.
thank you, Alli.
I want to, oh, go ahead, Heather.
I was just going to say, going back to what Alli said, is, the library is third space. And so I think that is those spaces are non-existent for a lot of people right now. And so just being able to let emerging adults know that we can be that space for them is incredibly powerful and important. So, starting with that, what are we at core? We are a place that they can be, that's safe, and that they can be in community with other people. And I think that that's really critical right now.
And I was going to add that I want to emphasize what Carrie shared earlier about one just big discovery we made in the during the EA Summit was how many staff members are EAs? How many staff members in libraries are EAs? And I keep that in mind as I do work across the state in my role. And I'm really noticing that when I give those people an opportunity to really share about themselves and about their thoughts about the work that we do in libraries, they have quite a bit to share, quite a lot. And I find they just really get engaged pretty easily and they get excited. And it seems like maybe we're not asking them as much as we think that we are, you know?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. The last thing I'll just throw out there, and Nini, if you want to show the last slide with our email information, just in case anybody's wanting to take down our contact information. The last thing I'm just thinking about too is I'm our youth service coordinator in Maryland State Library Agency, and it's been a really eye-opening experience and a great way to work with Nini, who does the larger leadership and innovative thinking work, and Alli leads our adult programming community practice. And just it's a great, emerging adults is bringing a lot of different service departments and generalists, specialists, whatever assignments, roles they are in the public library. It's bringing a lot of people together to work together in a collaborative way, which I think is very cool. So, all right. Thank you all so much for being with us this afternoon and hearing about emerging adults and what we're doing in Maryland, and things we're hoping to continue the work and grow in this area. And I'll throw it back to you, Hillary. Thanks for having us.
Thank you all. Wow, you're seeing comments in the chat, but thank you all so much. This has been a great session. Alli, Carrie, Nini, and Heather, thank you again. Just a reminder that we'll meet again on Zoom next month on April 14th. And so, and here's their contact information if you all need that. These slides and so forth will be available in a few days. Andrea will send that out. Thank you all again so much, and hope you have a great week.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Pleasure to be here.